Howdy Hive Scum and welcome back. I hope you enjoyed my last Less is More painting tutorial where I painted an Iron Warrior Raptor for the new Kill Team box set. This time we're looking at another one of the Chaos Raptors, and this time it is one of the Night Lord's Legion. A definite favourite out there for those fans of Grimdark vampires. This one was a lot of fun. Like the Iron Warriors, I have never painted a Night Lord to date. So this is the first time I'll ever be painting a Night Lord, and probably not the last, seeing as how this came out so effortlessly. Again, with this series, the emphasis is on less is more. It's about achieving really strong, impactful paint jobs that look great on your tabletop and take very little effort indeed. Again, it's not about the miniature, it's about the philosophy of less is more. A limited palette, limited tools and equipment, and a free approach to painting your Warhammer miniatures. Let's take a look at how I went about painting this Night Lord Raptor for Kill Team. Okay, so if you watched my Iron Warriors video, I did a little bit of a talk on how I like to add texture to not only the bases of my miniatures, but also to the flatter surfaces on my Warhammer miniatures too. And I did that with the Iron Warrior as well. I used Typhus Corrosion, which has a bit of sand and grit in it, to add a bit of texture to some of the recesses and some of the armor plating on the Iron Warrior. And I'm going to do the same thing here before I prime my miniature in Chaos Black Spray. So with our miniature primed in a matte black spray, we're going to up the contrast colossally using a very bright silver, in this case Runefang Steel, mixed 50-50 with contrast Talassar Blue. And what I'm going to do is sponge over the miniature using a damp makeup sponge this mixture all over the armor of the entire miniature with a nice heavy coating. This adds texture but also really high contrast. With the blue silver now dry on our Night Lord and the contrast up to 100, we're now going to douse the entire thing in some speed paint by Army Painter. In this instance, we're using Turnbull Turquoise. This is a very dark greyish turquoise, which will work really well with our silver blue. Now you might be thinking at this stage that this miniature is looking more Alpha Legion than it is Night Lords, but trust the process, we are going to darken things down colossally by the end. But it is an interesting choice that I went for a more metallic armor, which is not too typical with Night Lords. It is much more typical with Alpha Legion. However, you'll see by the end of this that things certainly do look very Night Lord indeed. Just one heavy coat of the Turnbull Turquoise all over this, and now it is dry, we are ready for our transfer. Now, to prep for the transfer, we are using Micro Set and Micro Sol. These two products are essential to make transfers work properly for your miniatures. Before I used these products, I was very hesitant to ever use transfers, mainly because I didn't like the shiny effect that they left on the miniature, as well as the sort of coating and sometimes creases that you'd get on your transfers. What Micro Set and Micro Sol do is that they make the transfer adhere to the miniature much more smoothly, and also remove the typical sheen you get around the edges of your transfers. First up, we use Micro Set, which is in the blue bottle. This one is the sort of adhesive that makes the transfer set in place and stay on the miniature for good. Once that's dry, we'll use several coats of Micro Sol, and what this does is it stretches the transfer into place and removes any wrinkles and sheen from the edge of the transfer. This is an absolutely awesome product, and it works so well. With the transfer now dry and looking absolutely boss, we go for our Black Templar Citadel contrast paint. This is going to be used on any of the belt buckles as well as any pipes we see on this miniature. Also, Black Templar is used for any armor joints and rubber areas on this miniature too. Next up, we're using Army Painter Heavy Metal Metallic for the claws and any other metal details on this miniature that aren't going to be blue. The armor's got some really nice depth to it at this point with only one coat of the Turnbull Turquoise. It really is a fantastic colour. Now, however, we're going to break things up with some spot highlights of more Runefang steel. So we're going back to the brightest possible silver that we can use here, and we're just adding a few dots around the miniature on some of the raised areas, as well as key rivets and points on sharp areas of this miniature. What this will do is break up some of that flat looking color and just make things pop a little more. The areas that we used heavy metal on earlier are now going to be coated in rattling grime, which is a really nice substitute for Agrax Earthshade. I do find that the Citadel washes that they have now aren't quite as good as what they used to be. The formula has changed. Agrax Earthshade and Null Oil in particular just aren't good enough anymore. So I tend to find that I lean into contrast paints now, sometimes watered down, but in this instance I want a darker looking finish. So I'm going to go with rattling grime here. This is a greeny brown and I use it nearly every miniature I paint. It is a fantastic contrast paint. Next up, we're going to be using some blood effects. And in this case, we're going to be using Citadel's Blood for the Blood God, but this time we're going to combine it with some odorless mineral spirits. Now, the thing here is that the mineral spirits don't actually interact with the water-based Blood for the Blood God in an usual way. They don't dilute Blood for the Blood God. They do not mix together at all. So what we get here, if we apply some odorless mineral spirits first to the miniature, is some really interesting random splattering effects over the miniature. And it wouldn't be a Night Lord without some blood and gore on it. First, I put down a light layer of odorless mineral spirits, and then I add, with a different brush of course, some Blood for the Blood God in vague splattering motions, pulling it around until it looks great on the miniature. I love the way the random sort of splashes turn out when using this method. We're nearly there after very little in the way of processes and techniques. The last thing we're going to do here actually is do the base. Now, first off, before I get the base sorted, I actually gave the miniature a spray primer of Winsor & Newton matte artist's spray varnish. This is a brilliant varnish. It is quite expensive, but it just brings everything together, even on a shiny miniature. It just kind of dulls everything down and unifies everything and makes things look properly grimdark. It removes some of the sort of wetter, oily areas in the recesses as well, and protects your miniature for actual gaming. Lastly, like many of my bases, I reach for pigments. The first pigment I go for is a bright orange rusty color. I stipple this into the base as roughly as I possibly can, covering most of the base and up the legs a small amount as well. Following that, I reach for a spot highlight kind of version with a yellow pigment. I use this sparingly on maybe 2 or 3 little spots on the base, just to create some light variation and some contrast to further make this miniature pop on the tabletop. Lastly, we paint the rim of the base with some Chaos Black and our miniature is done. Super fast, super effective, super grimdark Night Lords for your tabletop. It's amazing what you can achieve with very little effort and being able to know when to stop. I could go crazy with edge highlights on this. I could add more color, more complexity, but at the end of the day, this miniature is conveying a real sense of darkness and menace, and I'm really liking how easy this was to achieve. It's making me think that I could almost paint an entire army of Night Lords this way in an evening. It really is that easy. As you saw there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps and we're pretty much done. I really hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope that this gives you some confidence to go out there, bash out some Night Lords or some sort of dark metallic blue armor in this way and get it popping on the tabletop, because I really do feel that this approach is quite a liberating way of painting, and it doesn't have to be perfect to be effective. That is the main thing. Less is more. I'll be back with another one real soon. Peace out.